I circled the date on the calendar 3 weeks in advance. A small silver star next to it made the box feel hopeful, not desperate. This Thanksgiving would be different. Not the kind spent watching someone else carve a turkey at someone else's table. This time, I'd be the host, the planner, the reason they gathered. The restaurant I chose sat on a quiet corner of downtown Asheville, tucked between a bookstore and a craft brewery. It was warm inside with stone walls and soft lights, just intimate enough to feel personal. I booked the private dining room, ordered place cards, and pre-selected the menu roast turkey cornbread stuffing 3 types of pie. They'd like it, or at least they'd show up. I bought thick cream stationery and wrote the invitations by hand. Dear Mom and Dad. I wrote even though the words never felt right. I wrote to Lily and Ethan too. Shorter notes, simpler language. Grandpa George's card was different. I didn't need to explain anything to him. Just the date time and at the bottom a small line in pencil. Please come. I mailed them all the next day. The woman at the post office complimented the ink. I used navy blue, almost black in certain light. In the days that followed, I kept the receipts in a drawer by my desk, checked my email more than I should have smoothed out the seating chart again and again. Every little detail was a chance to be visible, to be counted, to be remembered. On Thanksgiving morning, I ironed my dress twice and left the house early. The sun was barely up, but I didn't mind. I wanted everything to be perfect by the time they arrived. The dining room was already set when I arrived. White linens, silver cutlery, water glasses lined up in perfect symmetry. The candles flickered like they'd been waiting, like maybe they believed this would be the night something shifted. I placed name cards at each seat. Michael, Susan, Ethan, Lily, George, and Athena at the head, not out of ego, but because the hostess told me that's where hosts usually sit. The waitress brought out the first basket of warm bread, and I nodded politely, folding my hands on the table. It was only 5:15. I told them 6, but still I thought maybe someone would come early. Maybe George. I checked my phone, then checked it again. I refreshed my email. Nothing. At 6:05, I walked out to the lobby and stood under the amber chandelier. The maitre d' gave me a kind smile. I couldn't return. At 6:20, I stepped outside. The air was colder than I'd expected. I dialed Susan's number. The phone rang twice. "Oh, Athena," she said. Her voice was casual, not surprised. "We're already at Ethan's. Your foster dad's not feeling great, so we decided it'd be easier this way." In the background, I heard the unmistakable clang of dishes being served, glasses clinking, someone laughing. Lily's voice, maybe Ethan's deeper one, chiming in. "I see," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm sure you'll understand," she added before hanging up. I stared at my phone for a while, not angry, just still. I went back inside and took my seat at the table for 6. The bread was cooling. The candles burned lower. When the waitress returned, she paused, looking at the empty chairs. "Should I wait before serving?" she asked softly. "No," I said. "Go ahead." I waited a few more minutes, though I knew no one was coming. I glanced at the empty chairs again as if they might fill themselves if I stared hard enough. Then I folded the menu closed and signaled to the waitress. "Just 1 plate, please," I said. My voice didn't tremble, but my hands did. I pressed them to my lap. She gave me a soft nod, didn't ask questions, and walked away with the menu. I was grateful for that, for not being asked if someone was running late or if I wanted to wait a little longer. Around me, the dining room had filled. Couples, families, friends, everyone leaned in close over their meals. I caught pieces of conversation, someone talking about their promotion, someone else teasing their dad for overcooking last year. It was all warmth and easy rhythm. I watched them without meaning to. I envied how natural they looked, as if belonging was just another part of the holiday. The food arrived: roasted turkey with rosemary sage stuffing and glazed carrots, everything I had chosen with them in mind. I cut a piece and tried to eat, but the bite was dry in my mouth. I forced myself to chew. I stared at the seat that said, Michael, then Susan, then Ethan. I imagined them eating something similar at Ethan's table, maybe not as refined, but warmer, louder, surrounded by people who didn't have to try to be wanted. My fork scraped the edge of the plate. I took another bite. It was better not to taste it too much. I kept my face calm, kept my hands steady as long as I could, but something gave when I reached for my water. The glass clinked too hard against the table. My hand pulled back. I folded it with the other. Across the room, a boy laughed so hard he knocked over a cup. His mother just smiled and cleaned it up with a napkin, easy and soft. I looked down at my plate. "Is everything all right?" the waitress asked gently. "Yes," I said. "It's perfect." I was folding my napkin when I heard the door open again. I didn't look up right away. By then, I'd trained myself not to hope. The sound of new arrivals had become background noise. Other people being met, hugged, pulled into warmth. Then I heard his voice. "Sorry I'm late, Pumpkin." I turned. Grandpa George stood in the entry, his old wool coat dusted with wind. His gait had slowed since last year, but his smile hadn't. It softened the hard shell I hadn't realized I'd been wearing all evening. He pulled out the chair beside me and sat down without needing permission. "You saved me a seat," he said, glancing at the name card I'd written in ink that matched the others. "Of course," I said, trying to steady my breath. The waitress appeared again this time, more relaxed. "Would you like a plate as well, sir?" "Just coffee," he said gently. "I came for company, not courses." She disappeared and we sat in the glow of the candles I'd nearly blown out. He didn't comment on the empty seats, didn't ask where the others were. He just looked at me like he already knew. Then he reached into his coat pocket and slid a worn envelope across the table. "I was going to wait," he said. "But maybe waiting's done more harm than good." I looked at the envelope. Its flap yellowed the edges soft. "What is it?" He leaned back and folded his hands. "It's time you knew the truth, Athena, about who you are, about where you came from." My fingers hovered above the paper. My heart began to thud like it recognized something I didn't yet understand. "It's all in there," he said, quieter now. "I think you're ready." I opened the flap carefully, as if anything too sudden might tear whatever was inside. The photo came out first. It was old, maybe from the 90s, slightly faded edges, soft. A woman stood in front of a white railing with autumn trees behind her. Blonde hair pulled back, sharp cheekbones, and eyes my eyes. The color, the shape, even the tilt of her brow when she smiled. It was like looking at the parts of myself I never saw in Susan's mirror. I turned the photo over. In Grandpa's handwriting, Emma, 23 years old. Beneath the photo, a business card, white, simple, clean serif font. Emma Harper, founder and CEO, Harper Design Group, Portland, Oregon. And finally, a letter folded in thirds. I hesitated, then unfolded it with both hands. "Dear Athena, if you're reading this, then George has decided it's time. I've written and rewritten this letter more times than I can count, never knowing if it would reach you. But I've never stopped hoping. I was young when I had you barely out of college. My family didn't approve of your father, and when they found out I was pregnant, they cut me off. I was alone, broke, scared, and I made the hardest decision of my life. I stopped there, my eyes stinging. Grandpa reached across the table and rested his hand over mine. I knew your mother before all of it," he said. "She was strong, kind, too young to face what she had to. She came to me when she had nowhere else to go." I looked back down at the letter. I asked George to help place you with someone stable. I never imagined they'd keep me away. I never imagined they wouldn't tell you. I've been looking for you for years, Athena, just hoping you'd want to know me. I didn't realize I was gripping the page until it started to crinkle under my hands. "She's in Portland," Grandpa said. "And she's still waiting." Grandpa let me sit in silence for a while. I read the letter twice. The second time slower, like I was learning a language I'd once forgotten. The handwriting was graceful. She didn't beg. She didn't justify. She just told the truth. She came to me when she was 6 months along. Grandpa said, "No job, no place to stay." Her parents wouldn't return her calls. I let her sleep on my couch, helped her get through the rest of the pregnancy. She asked me to find a safe home for you. She thought that was the most selfless thing she could do. I stared at the last line of the letter. I love you. I always have. Emma, I thought Michael and Susan could give you a better life. Grandpa continued. They were settled. They had a house. They'd been trying to have kids. I thought I was giving you a family, but I was wrong about them. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He kept going. They agreed quickly. Too quickly, maybe. Emma signed the papers. I thought they'd raise you with love with pride. But the first time I visited and saw how Susan spoke to you like you were an obligation, I knew something was off. I tried to say something. She said, "We're doing our duty." That word stuck with me. I felt something click into place. A quiet truth I'd never been able to name. I hadn't grown up resented. I'd grown up owed. Emma never stopped searching. He said when she built her company out west, she hired people just to follow adoption records. Most were sealed, yours included. But last year, she tracked me down through an old church listing. I made her a promise that night if you were ready, I'd give you the letter. I folded the page and slipped it back into the envelope. I didn't know what to do with it yet, but I knew I wasn't going to throw it away. She's not asking for anything, Grandpa added. Just a chance. And maybe for you to decide what comes next. I didn't tell Grandpa I was going. I needed to do it alone. The drive to Maple Street was short, but it stretched long inside me. Every stoplight gave me a chance to turn around. I didn't. Their house looked the same. Fresh paint, trimmed hedges, the porch swing still creaking in the breeze. I parked across the street, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. Lily's car was in the driveway. Ethan's old truck, too. They were all home. Susan opened the door. Her expression froze for a second, then settled into something polite. Athena, what a surprise. I need to speak with all of you, I said. She hesitated but opened the door wider. I stepped inside. Michael was in his usual chair, the news playing low on the TV. Lily was at the table with a cup of tea. Ethan leaning against the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone. I stood in the middle of the room. I know about Emma. Silence fell like a dropped plate. Emma Harper, I said louder. My mother, the woman who gave birth to me, the one who asked Grandpa to find me a family. Susan's mouth twitched. We took you in. Don't rewrite history. I'm not rewriting anything, I said calmly. You gave me shelter, not love. You gave me food, not belonging. Michael shifted in his chair but didn't speak. You didn't fail me, I said. You just never saw me. And I don't need to keep waiting for you, too. Ethan scoffed. Lily looked away. I turned to Susan. Thank you for the roof. I'll take it from here. I walked out without waiting for a reply. My heels echoed down the steps. The air outside felt sharper but lighter somehow. As I closed the car door behind me, I didn't cry. I didn't even look back. By the time I reached Grandpa's, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. The plane touched down in Portland just after noon. The city stretched gray and misted beneath the clouds, its skyline unfamiliar but not unfriendly. Grandpa had offered to come with me, but I told him I needed this first meeting to be mine. I arrived early at the cafe near Pioneer Square, the one Emma had suggested, small, tucked into a corner with old brick walls and warm lighting. I chose a table by the window. The cup of chamomile tea in front of me had gone cold twice by the time the door opened again. She stepped in, slowly scanning the room. Her hair was tied back her coat, neat and long, but what struck me first immediately were her eyes. Mine? Or maybe mine were hers. When our eyes met, she paused. Her lips parted as if words had rushed forward but collided in her throat. I stood. She walked toward me, measured and cautious, as if afraid I might disappear if she moved too quickly. When she reached me, she stopped and whispered, Can you forgive me for letting you grow up feeling unloved? I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My throat was tight, but not with anger, not even sadness. Just the weight of something I'd carried too long finally shifting. So I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around her. She was warm, slightly trembling. Her hands clung to my back like she'd waited years to touch something real. I'm here now, I whispered into her shoulder. She pulled back, eyes wet, but steady. You look just like him, but your voice, that's mine. We sat and talked for hours. Nothing structured. No big speeches, just simple truths traded gently across the table. She told me about design school, about the business she built from her garage, about how she never stopped looking even when everyone told her to let it go. I told her about the attic bedroom, about the Thanksgiving that never happened, about Grandpa's quiet loyalty. When we stood to leave, she asked if I had dinner plans. I didn't. So I followed her out into the Portland evening, the sound of gulls overhead, her hand light on my shoulder. Emma's penthouse overlooked the river, the windows tall enough to catch the last streaks of afternoon light. The table was simple, set for 3. No name cards, no folded menus, just linen napkins, polished silver, and a quiet steadiness that didn't ask for anything in return. Grandpa arrived just before 5 arms full of rosemary and 2 bottles of cider. He took one look at the view and muttered, "Not bad for a girl who started with nothing but a sketch pad and grit." Emma laughed easy and open and told him to sit down before he dropped anything. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and sage. Emma had made the pie crusts from scratch. I'd helped peel apples earlier, the rhythm of the knife strangely comforting. The turkey rested on the counter, golden and warm. "I think you should carve," Emma said, handing me the knife. I hesitated. Not out of fear, just surprise. I'd never been asked before. Grandpa was humming softly an old tune I remembered from summers on his porch. His foot tapped gently under the table. Emma poured cider into 3 mismatched glasses and raised hers with a quiet smile. We sat. We passed food. No one made speeches. No one performed joy. The air didn't strain to hold something it wasn't built for. It just held us. I carved the turkey slowly. The slices were uneven, but no one minded. Grandpa reached for a second helping before the first was finished. Emma refilled his glass. I caught her watching me, once eyes soft, not full of questions, but gratitude. Later, we lingered over pie and let the night stretch out. There was no tension in the silence, no need to fill every space. I looked at the table, at the faces around it. Every seat was filled. Not out of duty, out of choice. As Emma stood to clear the plates, she brushed my shoulder and said, "You belong here." And for the first time in years, I believed it. I stayed behind to wash the dishes, listening to Grandpa and Emma talk about music and recipes and old roads they used to drive. When I dried my hands and stepped out onto the balcony, the city lights shimmered back like stars. I wrote it late one evening, sitting at Emma's kitchen table while the city glowed beneath the windows. The house was quiet. Grandpa asleep in the guest room. Emma reading on the couch, her glasses slipping down her nose. I didn't write to accuse. I didn't need to relive the years. I just needed to end them. Dear Michael, Susan, Ethan, and Lily, I hope you're well. I wanted to say thank you for the roof you gave me, for the meals, for the space I filled in your home. It wasn't always easy, but it shaped me. I found peace not in the past, but ahead. I'm no longer waiting to be chosen by people who never saw me. I've chosen myself. You don't need to respond. This isn't an invitation. It's a farewell. Be well, Athena. I folded it, sealed it, and mailed it the next morning. As it slipped through the blue box's slot, something in me settled. Not triumph, just clarity. Weeks passed. Portland began to feel like something more than temporary. I started working with Emma's design team, not as her daughter, but as a contract analyst. Evenings were quiet. My name wasn't yelled across the house anymore. It was said gently, like it belonged. Then one afternoon, while Grandpa and I were planting herbs in the balcony pots, my phone buzzed. A message from Lily. "Can you help Ethan? Lost everything? Mom and Dad are struggling." No greeting. No warmth, just need. I stared at it for a few seconds, then pressed delete. The silence that followed felt clean. Grandpa looked over at me, saw the expression on my face, and said nothing until I set the phone down. "You've given them enough, kiddo," he said softly. "Now live." I reached for the rosemary and pressed it gently into the soil. His hands moved beside mine, steady and sure. Athena learns that true belonging comes from self-acceptance and choosing connections that value her authentically. Her meticulously planned Thanksgiving, abandoned by her foster family, reveals their inability to see her worth, leaving her feeling like an obligation. Through Grandpa George's revelation about her birth mother, Athena discovers a past rooted in love, not duty. By confronting her foster family and embracing Emma, she realizes she no longer needs to wait for others' validation. Instead, she chooses herself, finding peace in forging her own path and building a family with those who truly see and choose her.
Christmas morning at the Thompson family home always felt like a performance. The perfectly decorated tree, the expensive wrapping paper, the careful orchestration of gift-giving designed to showcase just how successful my parents had become. This year, however, the performance was about to take an unexpected turn. I arrived at 9 a.m. sharp as tradition demanded, carrying a small bag of gifts for everyone. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, and classical music played softly in the background. My mother, Patricia, was already in full hostess mode, ensuring everyone had coffee and that the photographer she'd hired could capture every perfect moment. "Maya, you're here," she said, barely looking up from arranging pastries on the dining room table. "Everyone's in the living room. We're just waiting for your Uncle Robert to arrive, then we'll start opening gifts." I made my way to the living room where my father, David, was holding court near the fireplace. My brother Marcus and his wife Jennifer were sitting on the couch with their 2 young children, while my sister Sophia was perched elegantly in her usual spot near the window. Everyone was dressed in their Christmas best, designer sweaters, expensive jewelry, the kind of understated luxury that screamed old money. I'd chosen my outfit carefully too, though for different reasons. Simple black jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, and minimal jewelry. To my family, I looked like someone who was trying her best with limited resources. In reality, every piece I wore cost more than most people's monthly rent, but brands they wouldn't recognize. "Paya," Sophia called out, waving me over. "Come sit with us. Dad's been telling everyone about the new yacht club membership." I settled into an empty chair and listened as my father described his latest status symbol acquisition. The conversation flowed around me: stock portfolios, vacation homes, private school tuition for the grandchildren. The usual topics that reinforced the family hierarchy, with my parents at the top and me, the struggling artist, at the bottom. Uncle Robert arrived promptly at 9:30, completing our family gathering. He greeted everyone warmly, making his usual jokes about traffic and weather, before settling into his favorite armchair. "Now that we're all here," my father announced, "let's begin our Christmas tradition." The gift exchange in the Thompson family followed a strict protocol. Dad would call each person forward to receive their presents while the photographer captured the moment. It was part family bonding, part social media content creation. "Marcus, come forward," Dad called, his voice filled with paternal pride. My brother stood and approached the tree where a large pile of beautifully wrapped boxes waited. Dad handed him the first package with a flourish. "For our successful son and his beautiful family, a little something to help with that new house in Greenwich." Marcus unwrapped a set of keys tied with a silver ribbon. "Dad, you didn't. The down payment for the house you've been looking at. $200,000. Consider it an early inheritance." The room erupted in congratulations. Jennifer started crying, the children clapped, and the photographer captured every emotional moment. I smiled and applauded along with everyone else, genuinely happy for Marcus despite everything. "Sophia, your turn," Dad continued. My sister glided forward, her designer dress perfectly coordinated with the Christmas color scheme. Dad handed her a small Tiffany box. "For our brilliant daughter who just made partner at the law firm." Sophia opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond necklace. "Dad, it's gorgeous." $50,000, he announced proudly. "Only the best for our little legal eagle." More applause, more photos, more celebration. Uncle Robert received a vintage wine collection worth $20,000. Even the grandchildren got lavish gifts: premium electronics, designer clothes, and enrollment in expensive summer camps. I remained in my chair watching the performance unfold, waiting for my turn that I knew would never come. Finally, Dad looked around the room with an exaggerated expression of completion. "Well, I think that covers everyone." The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the room turned toward me, then back to Dad, then to me again. The photographer lowered her camera, sensing the shift in energy. "Dad," Sophia said quietly. What about Maya? My father's expression hardened. He looked directly at me, his voice carrying across the room with deliberate clarity. Some people don't deserve presents. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. I felt the familiar sting of public humiliation, the same feeling I'd experienced countless times growing up when my achievements were dismissed and my choices criticized. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Dad, that's... No, Marcus, Dad interrupted. Maya made her choices. She dropped out of a perfectly good business program to pursue art. She turned down a job at my firm to paint pictures. She's 32 years old and still hasn't figured out how to be a responsible adult. Why should we reward failure? My mother nodded in agreement. We've supported her long enough. Maybe it's time for some tough love. The room was completely silent except for the soft classical music still playing in the background. I could see the discomfort on everyone's faces, the awkwardness of witnessing family cruelty disguised as life lessons. I smiled calmly and pulled out my phone. That's fine, Dad, I said, my voice steady and pleasant. I understand your position. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed, then hit dial. The phone rang twice before someone answered. Mr. Patterson? This is Maya Thompson. I hope you're enjoying Christmas morning with your family. Yes, I'm calling about the Thompson mortgage account. Actually, I need to discuss some changes to the payment structure. My father's face went white. Maya, what are you doing? I held up one finger, continuing my conversation. Yes, that's correct. I've been covering the monthly payments for the past 18 months through Pinnacle Holdings. No, I'd like to discontinue that arrangement effective immediately. Yes, I understand they'll receive notice of the change within 24 hours. I ended the call and looked up at my family's shocked faces. What was that about? My mother demanded. Before I could answer, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and smiled. It's your mortgage company, I said pleasantly. They probably want to discuss your account status. Dad fumbled for his own phone, his hands shaking slightly as he answered. Hello. This is David Thompson. What do you mean changes to our account? I watched as the color drained from his face while he listened to the voice on the other end. But that's impossible, he said. We've never missed a payment. What do you mean someone else has been paying? I stood up and walked to the center of the room where all the discarded wrapping paper lay scattered around the Christmas tree. Dad, while you were explaining to everyone why I don't deserve presents, I thought this might be a good time to clear up some misconceptions about my financial situation. Maya, what have you done? Sophia whispered. Nothing dramatic, I replied. I just stopped paying your mortgage. And your car payments. And the monthly fees for your yacht club membership. And the insurance premiums on this house. The room was completely silent except for Dad's continued conversation with the mortgage company, his voice growing more panicked with each exchange. You see, I continued, while you've all been assuming I'm struggling to make ends meet as an artist, I've actually been running a somewhat successful business. Pinnacle Holdings. Maybe you've heard of it. Uncle Robert's eyes widened. Pinnacle Holdings. The investment firm? That's the one. We manage about $4 billion in assets across various sectors. Real estate, technology, energy, pharmaceuticals. I started it 8 years ago with the money I made selling my first painting. My mother was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. That's impossible. You live in that tiny apartment. I live in that tiny apartment because I like it. It's quiet, it's private, and it's paid for. Just like this house was until about 5 minutes ago. Dad finally ended his call, his face ashen. They say you've been paying our mortgage for 18 months. That without your payments, we're 3 months behind and facing foreclosure. That's correct, I confirmed. You defaulted on your mortgage 2 years ago when Dad's investment firm lost that big client. Rather than let you lose the house, I had Pinnacle Holdings take over the payments. Anonymously, of course. But why? Marcus asked, his voice barely audible. Because despite everything, you're my family. Even when you treat me like a disappointment, even when you publicly humiliate me at Christmas dinner, even when you decide I don't deserve presents, you're still my family. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder of documents. But I'm tired of being treated like a charity case by people who are actually living on my charity. I opened the folder and began reading. David Thompson, mortgage payments covered by Pinnacle Holdings, $347,000. Patricia Thompson, car lease payments, $23,000. Marcus Thompson, private school tuition for both children. $78,000. Sophia Thompson, law school loan payments. $45,000. Each name, each amount, each revelation hit the room like a physical blow. In total, over the past 18 months, I've quietly covered $612,000 in family expenses because I believed in taking care of the people I love. Dad slumped into his chair, the weight of his words and actions finally sinking in. We had no idea. Of course you didn't. Because none of you ever asked about my life. You made assumptions based on my clothes, my apartment, my career choices. You decided I was failing and never bothered to look deeper. I walked over to the Christmas tree and picked up one of the discarded gift boxes, turning it over in my hands. You want to know about presents, Dad? Last month, I donated $2 million to the Children's Hospital downtown. They're naming the new art therapy wing after our family. The Thompson Wing. I thought you'd be proud to have our name associated with helping sick children express themselves through creativity. Tears were streaming down my mother's face. Oh, Maya. But here's the thing about presents, I continued. The best ones aren't about showing off wealth or status. They're about understanding what someone truly needs and providing it out of love. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small wrapped package. So I do have a present for you, Dad. All of you, actually. I handed him the package, which he opened with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. What is this? He asked. It's a deed. To this house. As of yesterday, Pinnacle Holdings owns it outright. Consider the mortgage officially paid off. The silence was deafening. But there's more, I said, pulling out additional documents. Marcus, here's the deed to that Greenwich house you wanted. It's yours free and clear. Sophia, here's a trust fund that will cover your children's education through graduate school. Mom, here's the title to that car you've been leasing. I distributed the papers around the room, watching as each family member realized the magnitude of what I'd done. And Uncle Robert, I said, turning to my father's brother, here's something special for you. Remember that small accounting firm you've been trying to buy for the past 5 years? Consider it an early retirement gift. Uncle Robert stared at the documents in his hands, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Maya, my father finally managed, this is millions of dollars. $7.3 million to be exact, I confirmed. Consider it my Christmas present to the family. But why? Sophia asked through her tears. After everything we said, everything we did. I smiled and settled back into my chair. Because that's what family does. We take care of each other even when we don't deserve it. Even when we're cruel and judgmental and wrong about each other. The photographer, who had been standing frozen in the corner, quietly started packing up her equipment, recognizing that this was no longer the kind of Christmas morning that would make it into the family newsletter. There is one condition, I added, causing everyone to look up sharply. What kind of condition? Dad asked nervously. Sunday dinners. Once a month at my apartment. No photographers, no performance, no discussion of money or status. Just family talking about things that actually matter. Of course, Marcus said immediately. Anything you want. And Dad, I continued, looking directly at my father, I'd like you to visit the art therapy wing at the Children's Hospital. Spend some time with the kids, see what they're creating. Maybe you'll understand why I chose art over business. My father nodded, tears finally appearing in his eyes. Maya, I'm so sorry. The things I said, the way we've treated you. You're forgiven, I said simply. But it stops now. No more assumptions, no more public humiliation, no more deciding who deserves what based on your narrow definition of success. My mother stood up and walked over to me, her designer dress wrinkled from sitting on the floor. Can you ever forgive us? We've been such fools. I stood and embraced her, feeling the tension of years of disappointment and judgment finally beginning to dissolve. We're family, Mom. We'll figure it out. The rest of Christmas morning passed in a blur of tears, apologies, and tentative conversations about starting over. The expensive gifts that had seemed so important an hour earlier were forgotten in favor of something much more valuable. The possibility of genuine understanding and respect. As I prepared to leave that afternoon, Dad approached me near the front door. Maya, I need you to know how proud I am of what you've accomplished. Not just the money, but the way you handled this whole situation. You could have destroyed us, and instead you saved us. Dad, I never wanted to destroy you. I just wanted you to see me. I see you now, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And I'm ashamed it took this long. I hugged him goodbye, feeling like I was embracing my father for the first time in years. As I drove home to my tiny apartment, I reflected on the morning's events. The money I'd spent was significant but not devastating to my business. More importantly, I'd finally spoken my truth to the people who mattered most. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Thank you for the most valuable Christmas gift ever. The chance to know who my sister really is. I smiled and typed back, see you at Sunday dinner next month? Her response came immediately, wouldn't miss it. And Maya? I'm bringing homemade cookies, not something from that expensive bakery. For the first time in years, I was actually looking forward to spending time with my family. Sometimes the best present you can give someone is the opportunity to be better than they thought possible. That evening, I sat in my small living room with a cup of tea and my sketch pad, thinking about the children I'd met at the hospital art therapy sessions. Tomorrow, I'd call the wing coordinator and arrange for my family to visit. It was time they understood that success wasn't just about accumulating wealth. It was about using whatever resources you had to make the world a little bit better. The real gift wasn't the millions of dollars I'd given them that morning. It was the chance for all of us to build something new together, something based on love and understanding instead of judgment and assumptions. My phone rang and I saw it was Marcus calling. Maya, I just wanted to thank you again for everything today. But I also wanted to ask, would it be okay if I brought the kids to your place sometimes? They've been asking about their Aunt Maya who makes beautiful paintings. I'd love that, I said, feeling my heart warm at the thought of my niece and nephew seeing my studio. And Maya? Next Christmas we're doing things differently. No photographer, no performance. Just family. I'd like that very much. As I hung up the phone, I realized that sometimes the most expensive gifts are the ones that don't cost anything at all. Like forgiveness, understanding, and the chance to start over with the people you love. The business empire I'd built was impressive, but the family relationships I was rebuilding were priceless. The call came at 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday, jolting me awake in my penthouse apartment overlooking San Francisco Bay. Sarah's name appeared on my phone screen, and I could hear her sobbing before I even said hello. Michael, it's over. Dad's company is closing tomorrow. We're losing everything. I sat up in bed, fully alert despite the late hour. Sarah, slow down. What happened? The investors pulled out. All of them. Dad got the call this afternoon. Hamilton Industries is done. 23 years of building that company, and tomorrow they're locking the doors forever. I walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights while my sister's world crumbled through the phone. What about the house? Mom and Dad's retirement. Gone. Everything's tied up in the company. The house was collateral for the business loans, Dad's retirement fund was invested in company stock, even Mom's car was purchased through the business account. My heart ached listening to Sarah's desperation, knowing information she didn't possess. For the past 18 months, I had been Hamilton Industries' largest anonymous investor, funneling money through Titan Capital, my investment firm, to keep Dad's company afloat. Sarah, how much debt are we talking about? $3.2 million. The lawyers say there's no way to save anything. Dad's going to lose the company, the house, everything he's worked for his entire life. What Sarah didn't know was that Hamilton Industries' financial crisis had started 2 years ago when their largest client canceled a multi-million-dollar contract. Dad had mortgaged everything to keep the company running, refusing to ask for family help out of pride. I had discovered the situation during a routine market analysis that flagged Hamilton Industries as a potential acquisition target. When I realized it was Dad's company facing bankruptcy, I'd immediately begun providing anonymous funding through a complex network of shell companies and investment vehicles. I'm so sorry, Sarah. How is Dad handling this? He's devastated. Mom found him crying in his office tonight, the first time I've ever seen Dad cry. He keeps saying he failed the family, that he should have made different decisions. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of a secret I'd been carrying for 18 months. Every family gathering, every phone call, every casual conversation about work, I'd watched Dad struggle while knowing I had the power to solve his problems with a single phone call. Sarah, what if there was a way to save the company? Michael, there isn't. Trust me, Dad has explored every option. No bank will extend more credit. No investor wants to touch a company with this much debt. And we don't have wealthy relatives who can write a $3 million check. Actually, they did have a wealthy relative who could write a much larger check without thinking twice. But Dad had made it clear over the years that he'd rather fail independently than succeed with family money. What about selling the company instead of closing it? Who would buy a company that's $3 million in debt with no major contracts? Someone who understood the company's true value and had the resources to restructure its operations, I thought. Someone like the CEO of Titan Capital, which managed $4.8 billion in assets and specialized in exactly these kinds of turnaround situations. Sarah, give me a day. Let me make some calls and see if I can find any options Dad might have missed. Michael, I appreciate you wanting to help, but this isn't something that can be fixed with a few phone calls. This is serious business with serious money. If only she knew that I employed 300 people whose job was handling serious business with serious money. Just give me 24 hours, okay? Don't let Dad sign any final paperwork until tomorrow night. Fine, but Michael, don't get our hopes up. This situation is beyond fixing. After ending the call, I sat in my home office, reviewing the confidential files I'd been maintaining on Hamilton Industries for the past 18 months. Despite the debt crisis, the company's fundamentals were solid. They had valuable patents, experienced employees, and strong relationships with mid-tier clients. With proper capital injection and restructuring, Hamilton Industries could not only survive but thrive. The challenge wasn't financial. I could solve their money problems before lunch tomorrow. The challenge was emotional. Dad had built his identity around independence and self-reliance. Accepting help, especially from his son, would feel like admitting failure. But watching the company collapse when I had the power to save it wasn't an option either. I called Jennifer Park, Titan Capital's head of acquisitions, despite the late hour. Michael, it's almost midnight. This must be important. Jennifer, remember the Hamilton Industries analysis we discussed last year? I want to move forward with a full acquisition. Hamilton Industries? Michael, that company is in serious financial distress. Why would we want to acquire a business that's essentially bankrupt? Because underneath the debt problems, it's a solid company with good fundamentals. And because it's important to me personally. How important? Important enough that I want you to structure an offer that will close within 24 hours. Michael, that's impossible. Due diligence alone takes weeks. Jennifer, I've been monitoring this company for 18 months. I have all the due diligence we need. What I need from you is an acquisition strategy that preserves the current management structure while providing immediate capital relief. What kind of capital relief? Complete debt forgiveness, working capital injection, and a modernization budget. I want this company positioned for long-term growth, not just survival. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Michael, an acquisition of this scope with this timeline is going to require your personal authorization at the highest level. You have it. Whatever it takes. And the purchase price? $15 million. $5 million to clear all debts, $5 million for working capital, and $5 million for equipment upgrades and expansion. $15 million for a company that's technically worthless? Jennifer, I need you to trust me on this one. Hamilton Industries is going to be a cornerstone acquisition for Titan Capital's manufacturing portfolio. After ending the call with Jennifer, I spent the next 3 hours developing a comprehensive rescue plan for Hamilton Industries. By 4 a.m., I had structured a deal that would not only save Dad's company but position it for substantial growth over the next 5 years. The next morning, I arrived at Titan Capital's headquarters at 6 a.m. to oversee the acquisition process. Jennifer and her team were already deep into preparing the legal documentation for what would become the fastest major acquisition in our company's history. Michael, I have to ask, what's your personal connection to Hamilton Industries? It's my father's company, Jennifer. Her expression shifted to understanding. This is about family. This is about saving something valuable that happens to belong to family. And your father doesn't know about your involvement? My father thinks his son works in finance, and has no idea that his son runs a multi-billion-dollar investment firm. Why haven't you told him? Because my father is proud, independent, and would rather fail on his own terms than succeed with family help. Which is why this acquisition needs to appear completely unrelated to me. At 10:30 a.m. my phone rang. It was Dad. Michael, I wanted to call before things get too chaotic today. Hamilton Industries is closing this afternoon. Dad, I'm so sorry. I know how much that company means to you. 23 years, son. I built that company from nothing and now I'm watching it die because I made poor financial decisions. Dad, you didn't make poor decisions. You had bad luck with timing and lost a major client during a difficult economic period. Maybe. But the result is the same. Your mother and I are going to lose our house. I'm going to have to find a job at 62 years old, and a lot of good people are going to be unemployed because of my failures. Dad, what if someone offered to buy the company? To take over the debt and keep it running? Michael, who would want to buy a company that's $3 million in the hole? Someone who sees the long-term value in what you've built. Son, I've been trying to find buyers for 6 months. No one wants a business with this much debt and no guaranteed revenue. At that moment, Jennifer appeared in my office doorway, holding a folder of documents. Dad, let me call you back in an hour, okay? Sure, son. I love you. I love you too, Dad. Jennifer sat down across from my desk with a satisfied expression. It's done. Titan Capital's offer for Hamilton Industries is complete and ready for presentation. Walk me through it. Purchase price of $15 million with immediate debt forgiveness and capital injection. We're proposing to keep all current employees, maintain current management structure, and invest in modernization over the next 2 years. And the timeline? The offer can be presented this afternoon with closing tomorrow morning if accepted. Jennifer, I need this offer to come through Meridian Holdings, our subsidiary that handles mid-market manufacturing acquisitions. To maintain distance from your personal involvement? Exactly. Hamilton Industries needs to be saved by a legitimate investment firm, not by the owner's son. At 2:47 p.m. I received a call from Sarah. Michael, something incredible just happened. A company called Meridian Holdings just made an offer to buy Dad's company. I maintained my composure despite knowing exactly what was happening. That's amazing, Sarah. What kind of offer? $15 million. They want to pay off all the debts, keep everyone employed and invest in growing the business. Dad can't believe it. How did they even know about Hamilton Industries? They said they'd been monitoring mid-size manufacturing companies for acquisition opportunities. Dad's company apparently fit their investment criteria perfectly. What does Dad think? He's suspicious. He keeps asking why anyone would pay $15 million for a company that's technically bankrupt. And what did they tell him? That Hamilton Industries has valuable patents, experienced employees and strong client relationships. They said with proper capital investment, the company could be very profitable. All of which was true, though I'd been the one who conducted that analysis. Sarah, this sounds like the miracle you needed. It does. But Michael, Dad is struggling with accepting the offer. Why? Because he feels like he's admitting failure by selling the company he built. Sarah, Dad isn't failing. He's adapting to circumstances and making smart decisions to preserve what he built. Can you talk to him? He's always valued your opinion about business matters. The irony of Dad valuing my business opinion while having no idea about my actual business success wasn't lost on me. Of course. Is he available now? 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Dad's office at Hamilton Industries, surrounded by the patents, awards and photos documenting 23 years of building a successful manufacturing company. Michael, I don't know what to do. This Meridian Holdings offer seems too good to be true. Dad, tell me about the company. What do they specialize in? Mid-market manufacturing acquisitions. They apparently own 12 other companies similar to mine, and they have a track record of turning around struggling businesses. All accurate information, since Meridian Holdings was Titan Capital's subsidiary and I had personally overseen those 12 acquisitions. Dad, what does your gut tell you about the offer? My gut says it's legitimate. Their financial documentation is solid, their references check out, and their business plan for Hamilton Industries is actually quite impressive. But I'm having trouble accepting that someone wants to pay $15 million for something I was about to lose to bankruptcy. Dad, maybe you're not seeing your company's true value because you're too close to the financial problems. What do you mean? I mean that an outside investor might see assets and opportunities that you're not noticing because you're focused on debt and cash flow. Like what? Like the patents you hold for manufacturing processes that other companies would pay licensing fees to use. Like the experienced workforce that would cost millions to train from scratch. Like the client relationships that represent future revenue streams. Dad looked around his office, considering my words. You really think Hamilton Industries is worth $15 million? Dad, I think Hamilton Industries is worth whatever someone is willing to pay for it. And if Meridian Holdings is willing to pay $15 million, then that's exactly what it's worth. But what if I'm making a mistake? What if I should fight harder to keep the company independent? Dad, independence is valuable, but survival is more valuable. You can't run a company that doesn't exist. He was quiet for several minutes, weighing his options. Michael, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think I'm a failure for getting into this situation? Dad, you built a successful company that employed 50 people for over 20 years. You created something valuable enough that investors are competing to own it. That's not failure, that's success that hit a temporary obstacle. A $3 million obstacle. An obstacle that's about to disappear if you accept this offer. Dad stood up and walked to the window overlooking the factory floor where his employees were working, uncertain about their futures. Michael, if I accept this offer, Hamilton Industries will survive, but it won't be mine anymore. Dad, Hamilton Industries will be better than it was before. Sometimes the best way to preserve something you love is to entrust it to someone who has the resources to help it grow. And you really think Meridian Holdings is that someone? I think Meridian Holdings is offering you exactly what you need when you need it most. Sometimes that's the definition of the right opportunity. That evening, Dad called a meeting with his employees to announce that Hamilton Industries had received an acquisition offer that would save the company and preserve all jobs. The relief and excitement in the room was overwhelming. At 8 p.m., Dad signed the acceptance documents. Hamilton Industries officially became a Meridian Holdings subsidiary, with all debts cleared and a $5 million modernization budget approved. Sarah called me as I was driving home from the signing. Michael, I can't believe this happened. Yesterday we were losing everything, and today Dad just sold his company for $15 million. How is he feeling about it? Happy, relieved, and a little overwhelmed. He keeps saying he can't believe someone saw that much value in what he built. Dad built something worth preserving, Sarah. He just needed someone with the right resources to help him preserve it. Michael, there's something else. The Meridian Holdings people said they're looking for an experienced manufacturing executive to oversee their newly acquired companies. They offered Dad a position as regional director. That's incredible. What did he say? He said yes. So not only did Dad save his company, but he's getting promoted to oversee multiple companies in the same industry. What Sarah didn't know was that I had specifically structured the acquisition to include a management position for Dad. His experience and industry knowledge were valuable assets that Meridian Holdings, and by extension, Titan Capital, wanted to retain. 3 months later, I visited Dad at his new office in Meridian Holdings regional headquarters. He was reviewing quarterly reports for 6 manufacturing companies, including the Hamilton Industries he had founded 23 years earlier. Michael, I have to tell you, this acquisition turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to my career. How so? Working for Meridian Holdings has taught me so much about modern business management. They have systems, resources, and expertise that I never could have developed on my own. And Hamilton Industries? Thriving. The modernization investments have increased our productivity by 40%. We've landed 3 new major clients, and we're actually ahead of our growth projections. I smiled, knowing that those results were exactly what Titan Capital's analysis had predicted. Dad, do you ever regret selling the company? Not for a second. I thought selling meant admitting failure, but it actually meant admitting that I'd built something valuable enough for serious investors to want. And your new role with Meridian Holdings? Best job I've ever had. I'm using my experience to help other family businesses navigate growth and modernization. It's like being a consultant, but with the resources of a major investment firm behind me. If only he knew exactly how major that investment firm was, and who was ultimately behind the resources supporting his new career. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever wonder about the coincidental timing of Meridian Holdings' offer? How they happened to approach you right when you needed them most? Dad looked thoughtful. I did wonder about that. But Jennifer Park, their head of acquisitions, explained that they'd been monitoring Hamilton Industries for months as a potential acquisition target. And that satisfied your curiosity? It did. Michael, sometimes in business timing really is everything. Meridian Holdings needed a company like mine, and I needed an investor like them. Sometimes the universe just aligns things perfectly. I nodded, thinking about how much effort had gone into making the universe appear to align perfectly. Dad, I'm proud of what you accomplished with Hamilton Industries. Building a company that was valuable enough to attract serious investment. That's something most entrepreneurs never achieve. Thank you, son. And Michael? Yes. I'm proud of you too. You've always been so supportive during difficult times, and your business advice has been invaluable. I just want to see you succeed, Dad. Well, thanks to Meridian Holdings, I'm succeeding more than I ever imagined possible. 6 months after the acquisition, Meridian Holdings promoted Dad to Vice President of Manufacturing Operations, overseeing 15 companies across the western United States. His salary tripled and he was finally earning the kind of income his expertise deserved. During a family dinner at my parents' house, Sarah raised a toast to Dad, who turned what looked like the worst year of his life into the best career opportunity he's ever had. And to mysterious investors who show up exactly when you need them, Dad added with a laugh. I raised my glass and smiled. To family businesses that are worth preserving, and to investment firms that understand their true value. Michael, Mom said, you should consider getting into investment work. You seem to have a good understanding of how these business deals work. I'll think about it, Mom. After dinner, Dad and I sat on his back porch, looking out at the garden he'd been able to keep thanks to the Meridian Holdings acquisition. Michael, can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Anything, Dad. Sometimes I wonder if there was a guardian angel involved in saving Hamilton Industries. The timing was too perfect, the offer was too generous, and the outcome was too good to be entirely coincidental. What do you think about when you wonder that? I think about how blessed I am to have family who supported me through the crisis, and how grateful I am that someone out there believed in the value of what I'd built. Dad, whoever was involved in saving Hamilton Industries probably just recognized good business fundamentals when they saw them. Maybe. But I like to think they also understood what that company meant to the people whose lives depended on it. I'm sure they did, Dad. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the past year. Hamilton Industries was not only saved but thriving. Dad had found a career that utilized his full potential. The 50 employees who would have lost their jobs were now working for a growing, stable company. And I had learned that sometimes the best investments aren't measured in financial returns, but in the lives preserved and the dreams protected. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Hamilton Industries exceeded all Q3 projections. Best performing acquisition in Meridian Holdings portfolio. Your father is an exceptional executive. I typed back, I know. That's why saving his company was worth every penny. Sometimes the most important business decisions are the ones that no one knows you made. Sometimes the best acquisitions are the ones that preserve what already existed rather than creating something new. And sometimes the greatest satisfaction comes not from building your own empire, but from using that empire to save someone else's dreams. Dad never needed to know that his son had saved his company. What mattered was that Hamilton Industries survived, thrived, and continued creating value for everyone whose lives it touched. In the end, that's what family does. We protect each other's dreams, even when we have to do it anonymously.